Good evening. The last of our past masters in this series is unique because he's really a past master in two sports, rugby union and rugby league. Lewis Jones is one of an elite group of players to have achieved fame and success in both codes. Coming from a Welsh mining village, it was somewhat inevitable that Lewis would play rugby union, although as a boy he preferred soccer. 1950 saw Lewis make his debut for Wales against England at Twickenham, and the fanatical Welsh supporters immediately took him to their hearts. He was very welcome in the valleys, but soon Lewis Jones was to make a decision which changed all that. He decided to move north, in itself a fairly harmless action, but what shocked his friends in the valleys was his decision to play rugby league. Lewis was one of the first international players to make the switch and be paid for transferring his skills. He's immediately labelled a black sheep back in his homeland, and only recently has he been made to feel welcome in the rugby union clubs of Wales. Well, Lewis, the last time we had a chat, you'd just come back from Australia to teach here in Leeds. In fact, that's still your job nowadays.
I think it was in a classroom up at Silveroyd High School, wasn't it, John? You were with, where, Radio Leeds on the old VHF.
Well, that's right.
And, you know, I'd just come back from Australia, as you say, and I thought I had a lot to offer because I'd been coaching a boys' team out there. You know, I thought I was really raring to go at coaching in a boys' school. And of course, I go down to the rugby league, not rugby league, to the offices down in town, the education department. And where did they send me? Of course, a girls' school.
You coached the rugby league,
yes,
of course.
But I mean, luck has followed me throughout my life, you know, and I regard this as being a very lucky streak because I actually ended up in well, probably the best school in Leeds.
Right. Now, if I talk to
even though it is a girls' school.
Right.
I get harassed in the staff room from time to time. You know, I feel like a bit of a compo in a room of Nora Batties, as it were. But nevertheless, I quite enjoy it.
All the Nora Batties.
I never get
watching
sexually
this.
harassed, John. Let's put it that way.
No, I'm sure not. Lewis, if we can talk about school, this must be very different from your own days back in Gorsinon, where you were brought up in a very severe background, I would have thought, with the chapel and your schooling.
Yes, my father actually was a lay preacher, and of course you can imagine how strict he was with us as kids. But, you know, at the age of 11, I tried my 11 plus in the elementary school there, and that was the parting of the ways. You know, either you passed your 11 plus, which we call scholarship in those days, you know, the Welsh scholarship. And of course I passed the scholarship and ended up in probably the best rugby school in the whole of Wales.
Who were some of the players that came out of that school?
Well, there was Hayden Tanner, for instance. So would you have ever heard of Hayden Tanner? Hayden Tanner and Willie Davis. Willie Davis, probably all Bradford Northern players would have heard of, right, because he came up and did very well with Bradford Northern.
Played in cup finals.
That's right, and Onllwyn Brace. I challenge you to pronounce that, actually. Onllwyn?
Onllwyn Brace, that's right.
Very good, John.
Yes.
Yes, and they were the three, I think, main ones. There were more, but, you know, I can't remember them right at this moment.
Well, as I said, it was in 1950 that the name of Lewis Jones first figured in the Welsh international side. Frank Trott's sudden retirement left a gap at full-back for the game with England at Twickenham. The selectors plumped for Lewis Jones to fill the gap.
Well, that doesn't leave much doubt as to who was playing England at Twickenham, does it? And there was this kind of thing to make it doubly apparent. Wales, dark jerseys, kicked off, and urged on by their supporters, proceeded to spring a real rugger surprise. It was England, however, who opened, when within 10 minutes, John Smith intercepted beautifully, and after a 40-yard sprint, just touched down. Othmar converted with a very fine kick. That's just what we told you, thought the English, but it was the last time they thought it that afternoon. The next score came from a clever run by Lewis Jones and a passing movement clinched far out by Cliff Davis. Minor injuries were attended to, and the teams crossed over with England still 2 points ahead. Wales were having far the best of it, however, and presently they went ahead when Lewis Jones kicked the penalty. 5 minutes later came another Welsh try. This followed a strong forward rush and was scored by Cale. Lewis Jones converted to make the score 11-5. Even now there was time for England to pull up, but the Welshmen were in winning mood. It was perhaps bad luck that when Botting went over for England, the whistle had gone for a Welsh infringement. And Hofmar missed with his kick. So that was that. Incidentally, Wales' first defeat of England at Twickenham since 1933.
The Welsh are said to be a very emotional race. What were your emotions before and after that game, Lewis?
Well, they tell me, John, that people, players, when they first don that Welsh jersey with the 3 feathers on, you know, that they are prepared to go out and die for their country. And well, I don't suppose I ever went to that extreme, but nevertheless, you know, I felt really proud of them. And I was interested, as a matter of fact, to hear John Charles, a few weeks ago, on the same programme, say that he was very, very nervous when he had his first cap. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. This is why I asked. I wondered if you had the same sort of fear or trepidation.
I was the exact opposite, because I think I was a very precocious young kid in those days. You know, I had everything very easy. I was lucky throughout my whole life. And playing rugby down in the services, down in Devonport, down in Denver services, and you know, it came quite naturally to me, and I quite enjoyed it.
You see, I found that...
Yeah, sorry.
I found that remarkable. You were playing for the Devonport services. I mean, surely it's a fairy story, isn't it, for you to be chosen for Wales while you were actually playing in the services?
Well, that's right. But I mean, you know, I had played for Wales before that in a minor capacity with the Welsh secondary school boys, and I think this had, had its effect. This is probably why I had the job in the first place, because nobody expected Frank Trott to retire in the first place, I don't think, you know.
But you weren't really a full-back, were you, either?
Well, I never played full-back in my life, and this is the strange thing about it.
So you were shocked to get into the team in that position, were you?
Yes, I preferred playing in the centre, but nevertheless, to play for Wales in any position, it doesn't matter whether you're full-back or hooker even, I'd have played. So,
and great to be off to a winning start at Twickenham as well.
Oh, yes, well, you know, everything came so easily in that particular year, for instance. You know, I played in that particular game with my first cap. You always remember your first caps, John.
Right.
You know, I remember that game very vividly. I don't remember very many games that I played in my whole career, but that particular game I remember because it was the first, of course.
Right. Well, we can move on, actually, Lewis, to your next game now, which was at Cardiff. France was slaughtered 21-0, so it was really with thoughts of a Triple Crown and Grand Slam that the Welsh set off for their next encounter, this time with the Irish in Belfast.
40,000 jammed the Ravenhill ground at Belfast for the rugby decider of the season, Ireland against Wales. Off to a jocular start are 24 hours that were to bring to Wales triumph and tragedy. Winners of the Triple Crown for the past 2 years, Ireland, attacking the goal to your left, throw in all they know to show that their form this season has been assessed all wrong. Not till the second half do Wales gain the upper hand. Then, in a masterful exhibition, their brilliant pack sets off a new golden era for Welsh rugby. Jack Matthews gathers the loose ball, sends it out to Ken Jones, and the Olympic sprinter does the rest. With Wales now 3 points nearer to winning the international championship, the match turns into one of the toughest, fiercest rugby battles Belfast has ever seen. A penalty goal gives Ireland a deserved equaliser and puts the issue once again in doubt. With only a minute left, Thomas dashes through for the try that brings back to Wales after 39 years rugby's most coveted honour.
What a great year that was for the Welsh. Well, the Lions tour was the reward for Lewis, albeit as a replacement for an injured player in New Zealand and Australia. The following season, everyone, of course, expected Wales to repeat that triumph, but only once, really, did they reproduce the famous roar of the Red Dragon against the old enemy, England.
Over 50,000 at Swansea for the Rugger International. Also some sharp precautions against invasion of the pitch. England in white kicked off against a Welsh team that was certainly expected to win, and right away the home 15 proceeded to show just why they were regarded as favourites. Displaying obvious superiority in every department of the game, Wales kept up terrific pressure. Time and time again it was touch and go, with England right up against it. The first score came within 20 minutes when Matthews went over to touchdown in a perfect position for Lewis Jones to convert. England continued to fight with their backs to the wall, and then just before half-time, Wales got a try through Malcolm Thomas. Half-time, an 8-point lead, and Welsh supporters in high spirits. Almost immediately, Matthews got another try for Wales, and conversion made it 13-0. Then a supreme effort by England, and a smart breakaway sent Richardson Thomas over to score their only try of the match. Hewitt converted, 13-5. But England had now shot their bolt, and presently Wales went ahead again, this time through Ken Jones. Lewis Jones converted, 18-5. And now for the last goal. A magnificent 60-yard run by Malcolm Thomas, with a couple of Englishmen in hot but vain pursuit. The flying Welshman even had time to go round behind the goal to touch down. Land of my fathers, what a run. Conversion brought victory by 23-5.
Land of my fathers, what a run. Well, during that season, Wales found another personality destined to become a folk hero, Cliff Morgan. Actually, Lewis Jones and Cliff Morgan only played together in 3 internationals for Wales. Well, today, Cliff Morgan is head of outside broadcasts for BBC Television. Cliff, I'm sure that's brought back a few memories, hasn't it? Some of that old film of seeing Lewis there.
I tell you what, George.
Don't you look pretty?
No, the thing is, we weren't a very attractive team, were we, to look at? It does bring back memories because, as Lewis was saying earlier on, it's interesting, he can't remember the results of matches, but he remembers people. And I vividly remember this fellow here, John Spark, as Cliff Davis called you. And it's a privilege to play with some people, not because they're technically good, but because they've got adventure in their souls. And that's what I always remember with great affection.
And yes, as we've said, Cliff, the extraordinary thing, Lewis was really playing out of position because he wanted to play in the centre and he was playing at full back.
Yeah, but there's no such thing as position, really, is there? You play football whatever you are, don't you? And all the class players like Phil Bennett and Gareth, you could play them anywhere. Hooker, as he said. You'd still play rugby.
Yes, but you still hate playing. There was a position I hated playing, really hated playing, and that was full-back.
Yeah.
But because Wales wanted me as a full-back, then you've got to turn out. But I'm sure I would have done much better as a centre.
Yeah, no.
I also played on the wing for Wales. Yeah, wing,
When you pulled a muscle, John.
Yeah, I remember that was the time I played with you, when you broke through once.
That's right.
He broke through once, only once in his career.
He limped, Jones limped into the line to make the extra man for Ken Jones's try.
I think I was playing on the wing, actually.
You were playing, but you limped in from the blind side.
You made a break,
yeah,
and I was up alongside you, and I had to decelerate so to keep up with you. And in the process of decelerating, I pulled a muscle, the first muscle I ever pulled.
Cliff, do you regret the fact you didn't play together more often? As I said, you only figured in the same Welsh side about 3 times.
Of course you do, because you always want to play with someone who wants to start playing football. And you always wanted, I mean, the interception you made in Dunedin, I think, on Lions tour that year, you intercepted the ball, which is from Rex Willis to Jack Kyle, and Jack thought he had it, and you took it and ran the length of the field almost
that
in
was
a test match.
Yeah, that was in the test match.
But
you weren't there then.
No, I know, but I remembered it because I read everything about you and everybody else, because you were my idols. All you were
father figure.
Father figure, yeah.
Cliff, I must bring you on to the day that Lewis Jones decided to turn professional. Now, the reaction, I'm sure, must have been one of everybody must have been stunned totally in Wales, were they not?
Absolutely. It was the same morning, a Sunday morning in 52, is it?
52, yes.
And at the same time as he was being incidentally, they were in my house in Trebannock, the boys from Rugby League, and to try and get us to go and play.
You should have come out.
I should, actually, funny enough, isn't it strange? I mean, I've been lucky all my life because I've got, do things I want to do. But I'd like to play Rugby League for one reason, and that is to see if I could have played it. And because the people who came down, Mr. Taylor from Wigan, all those years ago, wrote to my mother and father every Christmas,
came down to Mammy's funeral, and became great friends. And I found in my job now the best people to deal with are rugby league people.
Extraordinary.
Yes, and I'd love to play with him.
So why did you not turn? Was it the stigma that you felt might be attached?
It was the fact that I wasn't disciplined, a bit like him. And I wanted to play where I liked, how I liked, and I didn't train for rugby. And, the thing I preferred most was actually I had a little choir in the village, and we used to go off doing concerts and things. And I preferred that to rugby. And so rugby wasn't my life in that sense.
Lewis,
but I'm sad
Well, I
about it
think
now.
you have the same taste as I have with the choirs.
That's
really.
right, Morris and Orpheus.
You know, if we ask John now, what is your like, and what is my like, and what similar likes we have, and I think it would be, the only difference would be you would probably say the Penderys male voice, and I would say the Morris and Orpheus.
Isn't it interesting,
But we'd still say the same thing, the same piece we both like. Mavanwi.
That's right.
Mavanwi.
But see, interesting enough, where you were born, in a village, as it were, if you play for Llanelli, I know a man in Llanelli who claimed he'd cured his shingles by touching Phil Bennett's boot. But that's the passion of Llanelli. And the man who stayed on his deathbed in Llanelli, and he said, I do not mind going to my maker, he said. I've watched Lewis Jones play.
Oh, that's lovely.
You see, now, I'm sure it's the same in Leeds and Huddersfield and Oldham, everywhere. That people who are earthy and close to the soil and working people actually care about sport like that. And the sadness to me today, Lewis, is that too many people try to make too much out of sport rather than put a bit into it.
We'll talk about it in a moment, actually, Cliff, but I think we should see Lewis in action in a rugby league jersey
One of the great joys of life, this is.
Well, there must certainly have been days, I suppose, when Lewis did wonder if he'd made the right decision by coming north to get rich as he thought. The streets of Leeds weren't exactly paved with gold, and it did take 5 years of bumps and bruises from Bradford Northern to Blackpool Borough before Lewis Jones collected his first medal in the game of rugby league.
There's a record gate at Wembley for the Rugby League Cup final, Barrow in the V-neck shirts against Leeds. And right from the start, the 13-a-side game upholds its reputation as the toughest sport there is. Barrow's first rush towards the Leeds goal line is stopped by Lewis Jones. Jackson to lose weight, on to Grundy, but the Leeds halfback bring him down and the pass is smothered. Winger Castle races to the line, but collides with Stevenson. It's a game for men of steel, not to mention spectators. You can bend a rugby league footballer, but you can't break him however hard you try, and there seem to be plenty of people trying. Now it's Leeds attacking again and putting on the pressure in earnest. Prior to Anderson, who tries to bulldoze his way through, but Woozy pulls him down. He's up again. Passing to Pryor. Pryor to Pat Quinn, and Quinn crashes through to score. Leeds 3, Barrow 0. And in the second half, Leeds press home their advantage. Young Delmos Hodgkinson escapes fullback Joe Ball. And that's 6-0. Wing three-quarter Frank Castle heads a Barrow counter-attack, but fullback Pat Quinn brings him down with a flying tackle. Next to try is Jack Grundy in a tussle with Hopper. The penalty for Barrow, and Willie Horn takes it cleanly, making the score 6-2. Leeds on the move again. The ball comes to skipper McClellan. Fullback Joe Ball brings him down. McClellan recovers and back heels to Street, who brings a pass to Don Robinson. Dewsbury tries to stop him, but he struggles on to make it 9-2. But Barrow undefeated yet. 10 minutes from time, they seize an opening, and inside three-quarter, Phil Jackson races through for a try. And when skipper Willie Horn converts, the margin is down to a couple of points. The last round is an all-out battle with victory and defeat swaying in the balance. But that's how it stays, a 9-7 win for Leeds. So, Leeds repeat Aston Villa's achievement in the soccer field by winning the Rugby League Cup for that record-breaking 7th time against tough opponents they'll remember for many seasons to come.
Well, Lewis, it was a hard-earned medal for you that day at Wembley, I'm sure, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's one of my proudest possessions, that Wembley medal. And, to have a winner's medal, it's really something. Mind you, you know, I talked earlier on about being nervous on a field, and I never had any nerves up to a point. Now, it was only later on in life that I started thinking about the game, you know, really thinking about the game, and I was very, very difficult to live with. You can ask my wife. I'm very difficult to live with on a Saturday morning prior to a game. And I think the Wembley, that Wembley atmosphere is something which is out of this world. You know, Cliff, I don't think you played at Wembley, did you? No, you wouldn't have any occasion to.
So what was
But
the
when
difference
you
between
walk
Wembley and
down-
Twickenham,
But
sir?
you walk down that tunnel, John, and there's that little white ray of sunlight in the distance, and it just gets larger and larger, and you come out onto that field and it hits you. Really hits you. And my knees, well, they were like jelly. And, you know, I admit it, they were like jelly, and I don't think, normally you would recover from this. Normally I would recover from this. But not at Wembley.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing.
Yeah. Cliff,
Not at Wembley, eh?
Cliff,
I
I've got to
was
ask you.
nervous, my knees were like jelly throughout the whole time.
He's going to let me ask you now.
I couldn't imagine it, because Lewis was
did you
full of
want to say
abandon, you
something,
see.
No, right,
Oh,
no,
that's
no.
all right.
Yeah. Sorry, John.
No, you were saying about the attitude you see between rugby league and rugby union. Now, here is a man who found rugby league a more nerve-wracking game, perhaps more exciting in that instance at Wembley than rugby union. You
No,
said
but I think
you,
it was age more than anything, John. You know, as I got older, as I grew older, then I started to think about the game more. You know, when I played at Twickenham first, before 75,000, as I say, I was only 18 years of age. You know, I didn't have a care in the world.
Neither did you ever have a coach, except at school.
Oh, no. Well, whether
we
this
knew.
had anything to do with it. Do
I
you
know.
reckon this had anything to do with it?
Well, in our day, there were no coaches. We thought a coach was a posh bus. Didn't we? We didn't know about the technical things. And maybe the too technical things coming into all sports does destroy that thing which Lewis brought, that fun and abandon and style and quality and that essential difference and that extraordinary bit of discipline as well, which is a self-discipline, which is that balance, delicate balance between freedom and accountability at the end of the day. Freedom and accountability, you know, which makes discipline the most important thing.
Well, wasn't it a tragedy that the Welsh people perhaps didn't accept that once he'd turned to rugby league? As we said, I've got to bring you back the fact that he was regarded as a black sheep, simply because he was being paid.
That was, I mean, that was the old days, wasn't it? You know, the dark days. And
It was painted very
it was-
badly in
it
those
was,
days.
Oh, it was awful, wasn't it? It was terrible.
But people wouldn't even go to his wedding. I think you did, Cliff.
I did.
Cliff
Don't
went to
talk.
my wedding.
Anywhere
But
for a
we
free
already
drink
talked.
and a cup of tea.
But a lot of rugby union players wouldn't, would
No,
they?
I was the only one there, I think. It was only
I
me.
think you would be the only
Only
one
one,
that turned up, yeah.
That's
You
right.
know,
I remember your brother standing there with the ring.
well, that's right.
That's
Well,
right.
He was the exception, you know. He was allowed
He
in
had to
because
go.
he was my brother.
That's
you know,
right, yeah.
Even though he was playing for Connelly at the time.
But isn't it
he was
strange?
allowed there.
Yeah. Isn't it strange that, you know, people do feel that? And of course, well, it was understandable because of fright, of losing all the great players to the rugby league. It'd be
Oh,
extraordinary
God.
one day if rugby league and rugby union played together.
Ah, now will
What
that happen?
sort of side you going
That
to
will
get?
never happen.
I
let's
know,
face
I'm
it,
just
Albert.
saying, but
You know,
imagine the
I
Lions
I
with
went back to Pontypridd once, you know, Pontypridd in the land over there,
Yeah.
the pub on in the square.
Yeah.
And I met this old Welsh rugby union lad. I won't mention his name, I'll just call him Mr. Thomas.
Yeah.
I said, he said, I've met him, and he said, how are you going, Mr. You know, how are you going, Lewis, you know, up there? Oh, all right, Mr. Thomas, I said, you know, he said, he said, but you've lost your freedom, haven't you? He says, you know. So I thought, God, I think he had visions of me being
I
in
know.
shackles and
I know.
chains, you know, with the iron ball trailing behind me up here, you know.
It was painted like that.
Felt a
wasn't
bit
it?
like Kunta Kinte
Yeah.
in Roots, you know, John.
Very quickly, because we're going towards the end, Lewis, is that barrier ever going to be completely broken down?
As the years go by, everything gets broken down, doesn't it? I mean, what still is retained, and I mean, there's some silly people, and rugby's got to look at itself very carefully, the administration at the moment, because of this new threat of a circus going around the world, which isn't rugby league, it isn't good rugby at all, and that frightens me slightly. But I hope
I think the
God it
Welsh
all-
are doing their best.
Yeah, I hope
because
we always
was
retain
down.
a sense of fun. 3 weeks last Sunday started the Ronda Marathon. And afterwards, having a pint of lukewarm beer at 9:15 in the morning with the finals. And George Thomas, the Speaker of the House of Commons, was there drinking a little glass of orange. And he said, isn't the weather beautiful here, boys? He said. And he said, yes. He said, the finest weather for 100 years. And this chap said,
Wow.
yes, Mr. Thomas, he said, I was only thinking last night, he said, if I wasn't on the dole, I'd take a fortnight off. And I thought, if we lose that in sport, and we
that's
lose the
the
joy,
Welsh
which he
humour.
brought, Lewis brought to sport joy. then it'd be a sadder, sadder world.
All right, well, thank you. We've got to finish it there, Lewis. Sadly, as always, time has caught up with us, but there has been a great deal of fun, I know, throughout the time that
I
you were
thought he
playing.
couldn't
the game.
have put
Thank
it
you,
better
Cliff.
than Dylan Thomas.
Well,
Great to see you, son.
thank you both very much indeed. Well, that brings this series of Past Masters to a close. We've covered a memorable era of sport over the last 6 weeks, and who knows whose career we might be reflecting on in years to come. Sebastian Coe, maybe? Good night.
Mm.